Welcome to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. Last night I had Steve Bassett on my Sunday night live, and since listening to him, trying to assess the overall arcing context of all of this UFO ET materials, I am in the process of reading right now Leslie Kean's excellent book on UFOs. And I've been doing some research in some other books this morning, and I've run across a remarkable documentary of the Hopis and their understanding of the UFOs. And so I'm going to change a little bit of a tactic here for this particular video. I've seen many people who have asked, why don't the ETs just reveal themselves to us? Why all of this shenanigan? Why all this time wasted? And what's the holdup? Just come and land on the lawn of Washington, D.C., etc. Steve Bassett last night told us that that is exactly what the ETs have already done, and Washington rejected them. This already happened in 1952. So the reason why they're not going to come back to Washington, D.C. is because the authorities, the military industrial complex, wants to shoot down the UFOs. We are trying to make a war with them for their technology so that we can rule the world, and that's just not in the stars. That's not going to happen. The ETs are way ahead of the curve on that one, and that is not what they want for us. But, and the Hopis bring this out extremely strong in this wonderful documentary, a clip of which I'm going to share with you. We do have our free will. We get to decide how the ETs interact with us. Now, we are stuck, and as I have confessed, my bias is toward the classical science, the physical, the grit of the world, etc. We want it for the technology only, missing the broader point. Yes, Ross Coulthart's eyewitness gave us a hint, and it is still in my mind. It was the most poignant part, not the video. They could have entirely left the video out. But what this gentleman said is that connection with the being, that is critical. If we want full disclosure, it's not going to come from authorities. Now, the one interesting, beautiful contrast that just struck me hard today, and I have hinted at this in other videos, in her excellent book, Keen on UFOs, has described how she is using principled skepticism, but her cases of the UFOs she has gotten from French military and political authorities who have the greatest clout. They're either military pilots. We want credibility with our witnesses. And so, of course, we turn to who? Authority. Why? Because in America, we have been brainwashed into thinking all truth comes through authority. And that's the big lie. And we are all brainwashed into that. That's why this whole idea of disclosure could very well be a complete farce. Not in the manner that the UFOs don't exist and the aliens aren't real, however. But it's a farce with the way the government has convinced us that it's only going to occur through some type of central authority. And I realize I'm going against what Steve Bassett said. I understand that. He may very well be correct. However, the authorities have been lying to us for 80 years. Do we really think once they confess and admit that it's all of a sudden going to make you believe in the reality? I don't. That's not going to get rid of skeptics at all. Just because the United States government comes out and admits it's real doesn't mean all of a sudden our lives change. Our lives are going to change anyway, but in a much more profound way. Not physically with more technology. It is ironic that it is the technology that is keeping us from gaining the wisdom we need. And this is so weird. I'm constantly looking for new angles of this UFO, UAP issue. Keene, in her excellent book, which I believe lends credibility to the hypothesis without question, her witnesses are exquisitely well vetted, no doubt about it. But every one of them come from the authority establishment higher ups. And that is one angle. I'm not saying it's an improper angle. I'm saying that is what we as a group, a world citizenry, are probably too enamored with. And I am being very United States centric because we think we're the ones whom the ETs really need to come to first, etc. And they haven't. And they haven't been. Now, Artie Six Killer Clarke. I've commented on this book in previous videos, but this is a very important book, The Sky People, Untold Stories of Alien Encounters in Mesoamerica, in jungles where they don't even know calculus yet, so to speak. And that is not to disparage their culture at all. Science is at a minimum there. That has irrelevance to actual truth of who we are, who the ETs are, what is the relationship of Earth to the cosmos. It's not going to be just through science and technology. The ETs have been busy visiting these people for thousands of years. And this book makes that case. But you very seldom hear about these encounters because they aren't high-stationed military authorities with super-duper secret access and protocols. They don't fly jet rockets to space, etc. So they can't possibly know about ETs. And I suspect we might be missing the mark in having that very scientific technology bias, and that's why we don't know about the ETs as much as we want to. One quick story out of this incredibly intriguing book, page 208. I'll read this to you. There are stories many years ago when I was a boy. The men said that one of the spacecraft landed and two men walked out of the craft and stood before the mask of Kokujo. It was a long time ago, maybe 35 years. I remember that night. That night became day. My mother was frightened. She cautioned my brothers and me to stay inside. I never saw the spacecraft, but the old men of the village saw it and saw the men. What did they say about the event? Here's what the witnesses said. They said that the men stood before the mask and appeared very sad. They didn't speak a word. When they left, they looked at the old men and communicated with them that they meant no harm. Obviously, they could have caused a massive amount of harm if that was their intent, but they did not. But you said they spoke not a word. Not as we speak. They entered the minds of the old men. The old men said they did not make a sound, but they knew their intentions were peaceful. The old men called them ancestors. Now that is odd. What did they mean when they called them ancestors? These men from the craft called the people ancestors. It means we are all a part of the universe. All things of the universe, including all living beings, whether they are people or animals or plants or trees or rocks, we are all interconnected. It does not matter if we come from the stars or from the earth. That's what science and technology misses with this ET phenomenon. So Diane Pasulka, in her excellent book, Encounters, talks about very many different encounters, and her analysis and discussion of John Mack and his remarkable work with abductions is very interesting. And what happens is, I thought I was studying a myth. This is on page 172. I thought I was studying a myth. My image of the UFO from a distant galaxy was informed by Hollywood movies and spoofs of people who welcomed extraterrestrials as advanced space brothers and sisters who they believed were there to help humanity evolve through advanced technology, much like the Greek myth of Prometheus, the man who stole fire. This assumption, ludicrous as it appeared, was true for experiencers, but in ways that I didn't expect. And here's the key. I was surprised by the caliber of scientists and researchers who believed they were in contact with non-human intelligence. This group included people who won Nobel Prizes and were at the top of their fields. Notice this emphasis: only the hotshots, right, have credibility in our U.S. society, our scientific, industrial, militarized, complex culture. They even defined new scientific fields. I was also shocked by the level of commitment to spirituality and esoteric practices that I found among these scientists. The top dog scientists, the authorities, turn to spirituality and esoteric practices in order to understand the message of the extraterrestrials. Let that sink in. This is something I, among others, have poo-pooed too much, right? This is my difficult bias I have the labor of overcoming. And I'm doing so through research, analysis, trying to attempt to understand. I watch videos, exposés, good stuff, bad stuff, ugly stuff, because we're on a quest to understand. In one of his last interviews, John Mack addressed the sheer enigma of these revelations. I think that the UFO phenomena is a window into a universe that is far more complicated, far more interesting, far more challenging, and far more awe-inspiring than anything we have ever imagined. So, very interesting on Diane Pasulka's part. And then Chris Bledsoe, UFO of God. Chris Bledsoe is also another one who has emphasized this particular aspect of the phenomenon, not the super duper fast moving technological craft as the only reason they exist. That is actually a secondary aspect of the entire phenomenon. The real aspect of the phenomenon, which is pure woo to a skeptic, and we can forgive them because they're not interested in learning the total truth anyway. If they were, they would be looking into all things without ridicule, and I'm pointing to myself too. I have to overcome this bias myself, but Chris Bledsoe has demonstrated that the spiritual aspect is the only thing that matters with the ETs, because we have to change our attitude in order to succeed as a species. Let me share just a couple of ideas out of Chris Bledsoe's UFO of God that always struck me immediately when that piece of metal was put into his hand and he had such an amazing reaction to it. What just happened to me? I asked after he got the medal and it just really He felt a current through his entire body, and it just about knocked him out. And the gentleman with him said, "Why you? Why is this affecting you?" Now, obviously, this gentleman from NASA had been putting this metal in lots of people's hands to see their reaction. The entire Bledsoe family had the strongest reaction of them all so far. When NASA took Bledsoe on site and gave him the Grand Poopah tour, they told him, "We've known about ETs for decades, but they don't want anything to do with us. They ignore us, but they really like you, and we want to know why." Why? Because you're trying to kill them and take their technology. Duh. That's almost one of the most dumb moments on our planet in our own United States American culture of science and technology. The reason why is because we are too materialistic. So Bledsoe was told that this material had isotopes that came from 50 million light years away. Now, we're not told how they know this, right? So we take it in the story form, okay? So, but this metal is a special metal, no question. These materials and their composition has yet to be understood. They hadn't been made by human hands, and nothing like them occurred naturally on Earth. He said that of all the people he had tested with these materials, only 2 people previously had a reaction, and that this confirmed for him the truth of my experiences. What that meant, I don't know. Notice Bledsoe is not building this up. He is simply recounting his experience. He doesn't know either. Beyond this, my biological reaction was the strongest that he had seen. And then over on page 247, Bledsoe says, he told me that during our family's briefing, the metallic seeming silver things placed in my hands were these very same quasi-crystalline structures. He did not say where they came from, only that they were dated to 50 million years old and did not come from Earth. He said that the galaxy was itself arranged in this regular, non-repeating pattern. Now, just stop. The pattern in this metal, in this small piece of metal, that Chris Bledsoe and the rest of his family reacted to, but him especially strong, was the galaxy's arrangement as well in this regular, non-repeating pattern, and that piece of metal caused a connection with Bledsoe and the aliens and the galaxy. This is deep. This is seriously profound. And yet we just skim right over it. Oh, well, show us the craft. Even I said, show us the craft. And I've had quite a few people telling me I might be missing the point. Well, that's obvious. I might be. And I might continue missing the point too, as I keep trying to process, overcome my bias, and understand the real nature of this stunning reality that we are having happen to us as a world. And yet, the majority of cases, millions by now realistically, are completely unknown. They're not televised. No, they didn't put it in a documentary. They don't have to, because it's not the authorities that are the important people on this earth. It's you and I. And that's what this Hopi documentary indicates. I will leave a link in my description. I will strongly encourage you. This guy put a lot of effort into this documentary, and it is fabulous. The information in it is stunning. It is truly amazing. I want to share one of what I consider to be a highlight of the documentary. That is really remarkable. They have a duty. We have the free will. We have the capacity. Notice how he said it is possible to communicate with them. In whose name do you come in? And then they give you some kind of a name, and then we can receive them. Do you notice the implication here? My wife told me this. She said this was a deeply moving part of this documentary, and I agree. But the reverence, the respect of receiving them so that we can acquire their knowledge, this is precisely what Chris Bledsoe says. Oh, you want to communicate with them? You want to see that they are real? Then you have to humble yourselves. That does not mean throw yourselves down physically or spiritually or psychologically into nothing. That means we stop trying to manipulate them for our own purposes, and we simply come with the heart's intent of understanding. Oh, you're from the cosmos. Well, wouldn't that logically follow that you have wisdom that I might benefit from to help me be a better person, a more loving person? So teach me. They are the angels. They are the gurus. And this gentleman says he has had visitations, and there's no reason to not believe it, because we have testimony after testimony after testimony after testimony that is beginning to come into the hundreds of thousands of people worldwide who are experiencing this astonishing phenomenon, whether they're simple people who know no science whatsoever, or high-ranking military officials. Even the high-ranking military officials recognize and understand that it's vastly wider, more broad, and all-inclusive than just scientific materialism. There are other dimensions that we are just going to have to get used to and begin to put ourselves in a position to participate with and participate in. Now, I will say out loud right here, right now, I'm not there. I'm working on it, but I'm certainly not there. I'm still grappling with the nature of this thing. I mean, aren't we all? Yeah, all right, tell us something new. I don't have anything new to say except what I just said. If we're waiting for someone else to tell us about this reality, then we're fools, because it can happen on an individual basis. I have been told that by several people in the comments to many of my videos. Believe me, your comments are taking shape. I get it. I'm beginning to get it. It's not easy. So what? That's irrelevant. It's not fun sometimes. So what? Again, that's irrelevant. It's enlightenment. And yet, in an ironic twist, the gurus already tell the people who show up to them, well, you're already enlightened. You just have to wake up to that. and that's kind of, wake up to it. Wow. I don't quite understand what you mean. Of course you don't. That's because we're distracted. The one gentleman in this video talks about, the other gentleman talks about, we are so distracted with our cell phones. We're looking down And what we need to do is put those down for a few hours a day and begin looking up, because the beings are interested in communicating with us. They are here to help us. And I get it. That goes against the grain of some people who want us to figure it out ourselves. But it always takes help from an outside source, whether it's another culture, to get us wound up and understanding something different than, because we all get stuck in grooves and we end up thinking that that groove is the truth and the only truth worth believing and accepting. And that might not be right. It could be much different. So it takes an outside angle to see a wider, broader perspective. That is why I insist on studying all angles, of course. All voices are welcome. I have to keep reminding myself of that as well. So thanks for watching the Backyard Professor videos. I will come back with more as I find it. It's very, very cold here today, 5 below at noon. Way too cold to even hardly breathe outside while I'm healing. So I have time to do some good study and research and share more information with you as I can. I appreciate all of your support. Be good, do well, have fun, make lots of friends, smile, and look up a little bit more. There could be a whole lot more to this than any of us can possibly imagine, and I myself am looking forward to finding out. So I will catch up with you just as soon as I know how.